Are we the only species who can develop language? If yes, then how is it possible? The reason why I asked this question is because it is commonly termed by scientists that the consciousness in human beings is the direct result of our ability to develop languages, right? So when we are building a conscious artificial intelligence machine for the future, we then need to completely understand how language comes inside this conscious being. So what do you think?
I can see that language is very important for consciousness and self-consciousness, but I don't know if that's actually absolutely required though. I mean, yeah, I would say that it's a very important, and certainly it's what fairly uniquely distinguishes human from other species. I mean, so yeah, and I think that I could just say that maybe a lot of language is not as expressive as the human language, right? I mean, a dog may want something. It could bark. It could, it could use its body language to try to tell you that it wants something. I think there's a need to communicate, and then there's a language that does serve that purpose, the need to communicate, and then there's also evolution of that to the next level, where a language that serve the need to express, to self-express, and also like in a sense, I think that's probably why it's important in, I would say, consciousness, because a lot of times to understand people's expression, to understand self-expression, self-aware. So these type of things are what distinguishes human. When you don't even have the language to describe that, it's very hard for us to understand what that truly means. What does conscious mean? If you can't even articulate that, it's very hard for us to understand.
Then
So,
does it
so
mean
again?
Then does it mean that even so, not just the language, but even the speech, the eyes are also important? So perhaps some animals who cannot actually talk cannot be conscious. The only reason being they cannot communicate what they actually want to communicate to their other counterpart. So
Perhaps,
yeah.
yeah. Yeah, I think, and I think to your maybe earlier question, like, is human the only species that could develop language? I mean, I think to develop language to this extent as human language, yeah, we are probably the only one that developed the language to this extent. But I don't think that we should think that we're unique in that way. I mean, I think that like we might be. Yeah, so far we are the only species, but we are not the end of the evolutionary ladder. And sometimes we are evolving today too. We are kind of becoming a semi-digital reliant species, and that we used to be not. So I would say that languages can be developed. I don't have proof for it because we are so far the only species that have developed language to this level, so that allow us to self-express, be conscious, be aware. But I would think that like if you look at language as a means to communicate, then I think a lot of other animals have this ability. They're just not at this level where they could actually express and be aware, exhibit awareness. Yeah. So I don't want to. Yeah. So again, right? I think that a lot of things are possible in the sense that they don't violate any physical or biological law.
Yeah.
So it hasn't happened, but it doesn't mean that it will never happen. It just hasn't happened because we are so far the most developed species in terms of our language ability. Yeah. And I would say that maybe I don't know, 1,000 years, or maybe 10,000 years later or something, or maybe in the whatever time scale that you want to talk about in the evolutionary time scale, that makes sense. There will be maybe some other species that are maybe far more advanced than we are. And then we know that, for example, dolphins and and whales, they have echolite ability to kind of communicate with each other in a fairly intelligent way. And so and they have these kind of social structures and very much like human, but they're not. Their language is something that we don't understand yet. But I would say that it's just simply that we don't understand. I don't want to say that they don't exist. So yeah.
I absolutely love the fact that the evolutionary scale that you mentioned, that we actually see it from a very our point of view. But if you look at if we look at other species, perhaps like chimps or dolphins, like you said, what if not now, but after 5,000 years or 10,000 years, they might develop that language, which is as per evolution, they have just started. So yeah, they might become conscious as well. And you never know what kind of creature they will become once they develop it, because we are not the same species like Neanderthals or even before that, the
Sure.
early humans.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And I think a lot of times, I think sometimes humans take for granted this fact that I think the reason that we are able to develop is that the environment is actually conducive for us to do so.
True.
If the environment changes completely, then we would not exist.
No.
I mean, we would not be the thriving species, that governs the
Right.
world anymore. Let's say that the planet is flooded, right? And there's like 99.999% of the world is covered in water. I don't think that we would be as it's not conducive for this species, the
Right.
human species, to be in charge of everything. But it may be more conducive for another species to thrive at that time. So like again, so I think we got lucky in the sense
That's
that the
right.
environment allow us to thrive and be us, to live out the full potential for being us. But if the environment changes, then whatever we are perfected over the millions of years of evolution may be completely irrelevant. That's why
Right.
this ability to adapt is so important. It's really because environment could change it, and it's changing every day. Look at COVID, right? So
Right.
it's very easy to kind of disrupt us
True.
if the environment is not choose not to be so kind to us. And I think that
True.
so we in some sense need to be a little bit more aware of what we do to the environment, because if the environment is not presents itself in a favorable condition for us, then there's no chance. We don't even have the power to even ask the question.
True.
If the environment don't let you survive, you would just die. If there's no
Absolutely.
oxygen or there's no water, we would just die out as a species completely. So so we've been very lucky, and I think that, and sometimes we need to reflect and think back and think that, wow, we should appreciate that, and really, I would say also be more kind to the environment to continue to have these favorable conditions for us to survive, to thrive, and not be turn into evolve into some other conditions where some other species may take over us, right?